Hey guys, this is Jay Calderon with Jay Unboxing with the fight preview for Leigh Wood versus Mauricio Lara. And a little bit of fight info here. We have Leigh Wood taking on Mauricio Lara. This is going to be taking place at the MOTORPOINT Arena in Nottingham, England, airing live on DAZN in the featherweight division with the WBA portion of the title on the line, currently possessed by Leigh Wood. Now, in terms of my initial thoughts here, the sort of first thought that kind of came to mind when I was sort of looking into these fighters is really how similar their careers have been. Both of them are sort of unheralded coming up, and they have to kind of fight their way through things. You know, they have a couple of losses, a couple of knockout losses early in their career as well. And then all of a sudden, they kind of came into their own a bit more. The real big difference between the two, of course, is their age, with Wood being substantially older by, I think, a decade than Lara. But in general, if you look at even their most recent record, they kind of have 3 out of 4 fights. They've had stoppages in their last 4 encounters, and they have a similar KO ratio, even though Lara is considered, rightfully so, the heavier-handed fighter. There's just a lot of similarities, and it keeps kind of popping up the more you look into them, so that certainly struck me as kind of interesting heading into this contest. The other thought that kind of came to mind was how rough it will be when the run for either guy kind of ends in this fight, which it will for the loser, unfortunately. Both are kind of in great form, the best form they've been in their careers, and so you kind of notice that obviously with the loss here, it's going to certainly hit something of a roadblock or a stumble, and it's just interesting how much that might affect these guys who, again, don't have the biggest names in the sport, but are on the verge of being able to kind of get those bigger fights with the win here. The biggest thing that kind of struck me outside of those sort of initial thoughts, but was still kind of a first impression, if you will, was just how good this fight might be. Leigh Wood, of course, was the winner of the 2022 Fight of the Year, in my personal opinion, with his knockout win over Michael Conlan. And of course, Lara is an all-action fighter. That's certainly what you're going to use to describe the Mexican. So I definitely think that this is a fight that could be very, very explosive on the night. In terms of what's at stake here, obviously it's the gold. It's always the gold that's always at stake. But in this case, it matters a bit more for both of these guys and for the fact that it's at featherweight. To start with, it's a bargaining chip for these kind of smaller name fighters that need something to bring to the table. While Wood is certainly gaining in popularity, and Lara's, again, an action fighter plenty would love to see, it helps you get into those positions of fights that are better for you when you have something that you can bring to the table of value, like a world championship. You know, neither guy is one of those dudes who you can just throw him in there against basically no one. It's going to sell 5,000-10,000 tickets. That's just not the case most of the time, certainly not in most parts of the world. Maybe they have a pocket here or there where they're particularly popular, but for the most part, they do need a dance partner. But in order to get those dance partners, they need something they can bring to the table, and that title represents that something for them. And at featherweight, that matters even more because it's sort of a wide open division. You know, you have Emmanuel Navarrete, basically vacating the title to move up to junior lightweight. You have Ray Vargas probably coming back down because he didn't do all that well at junior lightweight. So you have some interesting names. They're kind of in flux, not to mention the fact that you have guys like Robeisy Ramirez taking on Isaac Dogboe for a vacant portion of the gold. You have, of course, Leigh Wood here with the title. And then you have guys like perhaps Stephen Fulton moving up, depending on what happens with the Naoya Inoue fight. So you just have a lot of potential options in a very talented division that also happens to be pretty wide open. That's not even mentioning Brandon Figueroa and Mark Magsayo. So you have, again, quite a bit of talent there, and it's still wide open. It's not so set in stone that this is the top guy or this is the top guy. You have some chances to kind of take over there for either man, and part of that means you need to win this fight and, of course, maintain that championship. Now, for the winner, as mentioned, this helps keep all of those even bigger fights on the table. With the loss, again, you're kind of not in quite the same position. Again, you might be something of a name, perhaps, for an up-and-coming fighter, but it's different. A win really keeps you in a dominant position at 126 pounds. For Wood, you have a solid following. Again, you're probably the bigger name of the two. That's why the fight's taking place, of course, where you're from and not where he's from, so to speak. So, of course, that does matter. But a win here really does put you in the best position to capitalize on the following you do have. And, for example, a fight against former titleist Josh Warrington that Lara actually beat in his kind of breakout performance would still be huge in England, but really only as huge as it can be with that title on the line. So for Wood, you have really a career-defining fight, a big payday at stake after this fight if you get through it the right way. For Lara, perhaps seemingly beatable to a lot of other people, he's in a weird position because if he has a title, of course, I think he has quite enough cachet, plus the fact that he has the gold, it makes other people want to fight him. but he is potentially a banana peel for those who might not be looking to challenge themselves nearly as much, especially if he doesn't have that gold to offer on the line. So it's certainly an important fight for him. And if he's someone who can basically come to England, take the title, go back to the States, go back to Mexico, and really develop his fan base and get those bigger fights against some of the names I just mentioned, I think that's the best option for him here, of course, naturally. But I mean, it's the most reasonable option or pathway to him being successful, because if he does lose and has to rebuild, might not be a great deal of names that are looking to try and challenge themselves against a hard-hitting, awkward guy like Lara. And for the loser, it's going to be back of the line. You know, this is in a division where, again, while wide open at the top, is quickly getting loaded. To have to go to the back of that line means you're really going to have to rebuild. For Wood, that's an even tougher ask. He's 34 years old, and he might not have another big, deep run left in him. Is he going to want to have to take backward step to all those kind of potential killers I just mentioned at 126 pounds? Probably not. Again, you could argue maybe the Warrington fight's still there for him regardless, to kind of give either man that sort of last shot at the run, whoever wins, but it certainly is going to lack a lot of the luster it would have had if he would have beat Lara on the night. And I kind of mentioned it there in the previous point. For Lara, you're a mixed bag of an opponent. With the gold, you might look beatable enough to some. Without the gold, you might look like a bit too much of a risk for most. You have to kind of get this win before you sort of put yourself in a position where you're really having to scratch and claw once again to get the notoriety that maybe your action style deserves. So it's certainly something that you want to keep in mind in terms of just focusing and making sure and making the most of this fight. But let me know what you guys think, though, about this fight. I think it's a very interesting one. It's a really good fight, in my opinion, and certainly one that I think deserves the attention. So let me know down in the comments. How do you view the fight? Who do you think wins? Of course, with this fight and their styles, I'd like to know if any of you actually think this fight's going the distance. That's a pretty fun question to me because I really don't see that happening. So let me know in the comments down below. Of course, you can check out the link in the description box for my prediction for Leigh Wood versus Mauricio Lara. I would greatly appreciate if you did that. You can check that out, of course. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB. You can email me at junboxing@gmail.com. And, of course, check out junboxing.com for schedule, results, betting odds, news, ranking, all that good stuff. And as always, until next time.